media likes to show that, hey, they're arresting the poor woman who's been here for 4 years, has kids. We don't know why they're arresting her particularly. There's a reason why. It doesn't get reported for the most part.
My wife's grandfather was a political prisoner for 23 years in Cuba. It's hardcore communism and inhumane as you can get.
I argue with a lot of these idiots that say, we shouldn't do anything about Cuba. Look, if anything, as a humanitarian standpoint, yes, you do.
You can't have a garden in your backyard. They don't want any self-subsistence. If you grow a garden, you go to jail.
Jeez.
They do random house checks. If they find you have beef in your refrigerator, you go to jail. My father-in-law, he got caught selling soap. You're not supposed to make money that the government doesn't give you. They threw him in jail for every bar of soap that he got caught selling.
Look, under the Biden administration, the floodgates were opened. And Democrats, including your opponent, Debbie Wasserman-Schultz, they all supported letting these people come in. Me dealing with a lot of members, I know for a fact this was coordinated.
It goes back to the Obama administration and the signing of the Iran nuclear deal, which was something that Debbie Wasserman-Schultz, my opponent, signed that. And she essentially signed off on a policy that we're still paying for today. We're at war with Iran now, or potentially at war with Iran right now because of the Iran nuclear deal.
Venezuela, most people don't know that Hezbollah has a presence there. Iran has a big presence there. China, like you mentioned, and you have Russia.
What's more attractive, socialism or freedom?
Welcome to the Carbonara for Congress podcast, where we address the real issues that affect the lives of people and families who live right here with us in South Florida.
Hi, I'm Michael Carbonara. On today's show, we have Javier Manjarres from the Floridian Press. Javier, welcome to the show.
Well, Michael, thanks for having me on.
So you've been involved, heavily involved in South Florida politics for almost 2 decades, or 15 years or so.
15, 16 years, yeah.
And I think you've seen a lot of changes since then, especially here in Broward. The last 15 years all of Florida has been quite different in the last 15
Right.
years. You want to tell us a little bit about your background, the Floridian Press, and what brought you into getting involved in politics and journalism?
Well, bad breakup, believe it or not, 2008. Bad breakup. I had to find time had to fill that void, if you would. We've all been there. So I started getting into politics, and I decided to get involved with the local party, which I realize now, 15 years later, they're useless. So now I have a big mouth. So over the years, I've grown my voice. I found my voice, and I started using the internet and got my start back in. I really cut my teeth in 2009 with now Secretary of State Rubio's campaign. Him and I were frick and frack back in 2009, 2010, and now we are here 15, 16 years later. And over the years, that voice has evolved. I've gotten a little bit bigger, a little more credibility. And that's kind of where I'm at now. Now we've expanded across the country, so we're growing as we speak.
Oh, wow. So Floridian Press has expanded across the country.
Well, the Floridian is here in Florida, but we also have Texas politics in Texas,
Okay.
Cactus politics in the Southwest, and then we have the newer one is Dome politics, which is Southeast, based out of Atlanta. So it's kind of like the same model
Okay.
in Florida. We're branching out in other parts of the country.
Oh, great. So it's really picking up. And I think that America as a whole is way more engaged in politics ever since Trump ran in 2016. Whether it's rage bait, hate it or love it, everybody's paying attention. It's the new entertainment, really. It's everybody seems to change and be angry or sad or excited every single day because they're all paying attention to politics and social media now, and it's changed dramatically.
Well, yeah, he's changed, whether, like you said, whether you like it or not, Republican or Democrat, he's changed the landscape of politics. I mean, he broke the mold in 2015 when he came out. I remember I interviewed him a good half a dozen times before he announced, and once after he announced. And I mean, I've never met a candidate like that before. So and now we are here. How many years later after he's president again? Look, American politics, the electorate as a whole, I think has changed. I can't say for the better, not his fault, but I think it's like you mentioned, the rage baiting. A lot of people he has definitely triggered a lot of people, in good ways and bad ways, especially a lot of progressive Democrats. It's like when he walks in the room, it's like the Antichrist just walked in the room.
Yeah, it's been very polarizing.
Very polarizing. But again, and also a lot of independents that weren't involved in politics before and Republicans now have something to look forward to. I mean, he has he has struck a nerve with a lot of Republicans that, for the most part, even before he came along, were very. They would just go along. Whoever the Republican voter candidates, they're going to vote for. Now they're more involved, more engaged in the process, and I think Trump has a lot to do with that.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, just coming from a different background, he was a businessman. And I think he's doing things that were outside of the status quo, and people realized they didn't really necessarily operate within the box. And I think it is better. I mean, I think we're going through a process as a society to digest politics, but it's much better that we're actually paying attention now than being asleep at the wheel and not knowing that our freedoms be eroded or taxes going up. We have no control of this. We have no control of that. And I always go back to this, but we saw in COVID how bad it really was. Like we had no more freedoms left, and we need to pay attention, whether it's polarizing or not. We'll get through it, but it's better than being asleep and not knowing what's going on with our government.
Right, and look, I think he handled COVID perfectly. Now, I do have a bone to pick with him because the day we announced Texas politics, we had no idea he was going to shut down the country. The very same day. I mean, I couldn't even make that up. So all our preparation to launch Texas politics went right down the toilet. So, and then we had to deal with the whole COVID thing for the next 2-3 years. But outside of that, I think it was handled correctly. I mean, it was an unknown. The virus is an unknown quantity. We never dealt with something like that before in our lives.
Yeah.
And hopefully never again we will have to deal with something like that. But I think it kind of brought things into perspective on what to do, what not to do. I think people like to blame him that he made us get shots and whatnot.
Yeah.
But we didn't know what we were up against. All we knew was tens of millions of people or thousands of people were dying, and we had to do something. So in hindsight, I don't blame him for that. But here we are.
Yeah, and I think we're still finding out all the things that were going on there with Anthony Fauci, and what RFK is doing now, I think, is really helping us prevent those things from happening again by really shining a light on what was being done, because a lot of people didn't know there was bad things going on in government, and they purposely deceived us. And I think RFK there is actually shining a light on those things. And the more we know, the more we can prevent it from happening in the future, at least from the lies and manipulation of how to handle those things.
And to his credit, look, he came out against China. He called it the China virus. Normally, presidents before him would not go as far as to blame a foreign country, even though they probably know it was their fault.
Yeah.
And that's ballsy.
Yeah, well, the media did attack him for that. Very
the
upfront.
media attacked him because, but it was true. He was right all along. Maybe he was divulging, intel. He wasn't really divulging. Maybe he was just saying what he was saying because it was intel, but people were upset that he was calling out China. But why not call out China? I mean, look where we are now with China. They're trying to control the Western Hemisphere now. They're trying to control the whole world, and so I mean, he was onto it, and I'm actually grateful. Whether he was Republican or Democrat president, I'm grateful that the president called out China and blamed them for being responsible for the virus.
Yeah, no, you're
Rightly
absolutely
so.
right. And I think that brings up another point. China, there's a lot going on in China, and there seems to be every foreign policy issue that we're going through, even domestic policies. The China's kind of the 800-pound gorilla in the room. What's China's involvement, whether it's rare earth minerals.
Panda.
Yeah. Now I'm just curious. Your journalism is very grassroots, but you have a national presence.
Right.
Are people aware of China's influence in many of the things that the current Trump administration is trying to address? Like, for example, I'm just going to bring up Venezuela, obviously, with the oil, and what that means with China, and what's going on. I don't know if you saw the news, obviously, with the Supreme Court in Panama over the canal, how that's dealing with China. With the Western Hemisphere, there's really a lot of geopolitics at play that really, I would say, maybe the average person doesn't realize how much China is really I won't say a threat, or at least something that we need to be concerned about.
Well, look, I think for the most part, the majority of Americans are oblivious to the threat that China poses against us. I think most people don't even check the bottom of the products they buy, and most of us going to say made in China. So I think until the excrement hits the fan with China, it's not going to make any sense to people. They're just going to say, hey, why are my prices going up? It's easier to blame the governor here in Florida. It's easier to blame the president, not as opposed to China. But China poses a great threat in the Western Hemisphere. What people don't understand is that they're gobbling up a lot of minerals and a lot of resources in the Western Hemisphere, in our own backyard, and benefiting them. So why is that? Why are they building up their navy? What's a threat to them? You
Yeah.
know, is it Cambodia? Is Cambodia a threat to China? No. At the end of the day, we're the big threat to them, and they're gearing up because obviously they oppress their people, so they're using their money to fund their navy. Now we can fund ours, and we're going to, but back to your question, most Americans do not know the threat that China poses to them until it's in their face. You know, they
Yeah.
don't. They're not. And you mentioned Venezuela. Venezuela, most people don't know that Hezbollah has a presence there. Iran has a big presence there. China, like you mentioned, and you have Iran. I mean, I'm sorry, you have Russia. Most people don't know that. People that are in the process know that. People who listen to some politics know this or have an idea, but most people don't have an idea. My parents wouldn't. My mom does no idea that Hezbollah is there or even Russia's there. None. So again, that's the ignorance on Americans. But then again, they're going by what they hear in the news, and if the
Yeah.
news is not reporting that and telling them in detail, because remember, there's news broadcasts are what 30 minutes at night,
We have so much information 24/7. It's
right?
impossible to digest so much data every day and be on top of every single situation. And there's a lot of situations. And the average person just they want to have a good life, work their job, come home to their kids. They
And
don't.
people live in their lives in sound bites.
Yeah.
You know, headlines, sound bites. They're done. They want to read. They don't want to read a story for 10 minutes. They want to read a story for a minute, get their news and get out. And that's the problem. So yeah, most people are not in tune to what's really happening
Yeah.
out there.
Well, I think that is the problem, but at the same time, that's why it's so important that when it comes to time to vote, that you're actually voting for people that you are confident that will focus on those issues
Right.
because you don't have the time to do it. If you're working and taking care of your family and paying your bills, you need people that are competent and are love America and have the best interest of Americans to actually address those issues as a full-time job. And you need to get the right people in the Congress, right people in Senate, the right presidency, and make sure they're actually protecting the nation and also putting Americans first in all the policies.
Right. No, it's a good point. But once you get the Congress or whatever elected office you're running for, uh, what are you gonna do then? You know, I deal with members of Congress every single week. I'm going to be there on Monday, and I always tell them, "What are you guys doing now?" Because if whether you're Republican or Democrat, if you're not conveying what's happening to the members of their constituency, I mean, mind you, they're dealing with a certain constituency, their
Yeah.
respective districts. If they're not conveying legitimate news and what's happening in the Congress, let alone what's happening outside of the Congress to their constituents, they're not going to know. But
Yeah.
of those constituents, how many are really paying attention to them? So it's kind of like it's easy to blame them to do more to represent their constituency, but it's kind of hard if no one's really paying attention.
Yeah, you're right. What would you say right now are the biggest concerns that people in Florida have, people in the nation have, just because you're on the ground, grassroots, and in
Affordability.
journalism?
Affordability. You know, they see the inflation; it's gone up. Look, I went the other day to buy normally an $8 Publix cake, you know, for my mom, and it cost $15. But see, that's where I crossed the line. When the $3.99 6-pack of cupcakes go up to 5 and change, that's
Yeah.
where I have a problem. But you see my point. Everything's
is.
gone up.
Yeah.
Everything's gone up,
And wages really haven't.
and wages really haven't. So that's people. That's where it affects people because maybe I can afford that extra couple bucks for the cupcake. Most people can't.
Especially in fixed income. They're not keeping up with inflation.
Right. And it's not just a congressional district 20, 25. It's all congressional district. This goes across the country. And you can only blame, it's easy to blame the president, but it's blame goes across the board. Republican, Democrat, they make the laws. You know, they can ease a lot of this problems that you see if they wanted to, but again, they don't. And there's a lot of infighting in D.C. They can never get along to some degree. Sometimes they do. Those are like historic efforts when there's a bipartisan bill that they can all get behind. So be it. But that's the main issue: is affordability, and also foreign policy. People are now back to what we were saying are starting to pay attention more to what's happening, especially now. You saw Venezuela. You mentioned Venezuela. People are thinking, is Cuba next? So especially in South Florida, people are wondering, what's going to happen next? Is this for real? Did Trump just go in and take out Maduro? What's going to really happen?
Yeah.
Is Cuba next?
Yeah.
So,
Well, I don't know if you saw the news. I'm sure you did. The order on Cuba,
Yeah.
now designated a hostile country, and they're going to put tariffs on anybody shipping oil to Cuba. And my wife's Cuban, immigrated from Cuba when she was 6 years old with her family, And she immediately got worried. I mean, it's a great thing if you have a regime change there. I mean, everybody in South Florida would agree to you. They all share that history,
Right.
that struggle. Even with the Venezuelan people, it's very similar. Um, but I could tell you that Cuba can't last more than a week without resources coming in.
Right.
So if something's going to have to happen, they need diplomacy very quickly because you're going to have a lot of starving people. I'm sure Trump is very aware. He's got Marco Rubio, Cuban, so he knows what's going on there. But that's something that, yeah, Cuba, they've been under communism since 1959,
Right.
and they have nothing.
Well, it's a failed regime. I mean, they're like at the worst position in any other communist country in the history of communism, I think.
Yeah.
And it just failed. Even their communism has failed. And again, I heard this the other day. It's like they used to be one of the biggest producers, if not the biggest producer of sugar cane. Now they have to import their sugar.
Yeah,
That says a lot about that.
does.
And look, if it's going to happen, it has to happen under the Trump administration. Look what he did in Venezuela. That easily, he took out Maduro. He went in and went out. I mean, to take out Cuba. I mean, really, I'm sure there's infrastructure. I'm sure there's war games that have been planned, plans are in place to be able to go in and control Cuba, just like they're controlling, maybe not to the extent they're controlling Venezuela. Cuba has nothing to offer the U.S. really.
Right, there's
right
no
now.
oil.
There's no oil. Okay,
there's
there's
no
tourism
incentive.
down the road. There's whatever tourism, but
it's been a threat because, again, you talked about Venezuela with the Russians, with the Chinese. Those alliances still exist with Cuba, 90
Right.
miles off of our coast, and it's been proven over the years they've been hostile. They've been hostile towards the U.S. embassy in Cuba. I remember a few years ago, all the people in the embassy, they got sick because they were
Yeah.
being attacked with this weird new weapon. So, I mean, the hostility has always been there, but there's human rights violations. You talk about people being oppressed. They have so many hostages in Cuba. If you speak out against the government, if they even believe you speak out against the government, you wake up the next morning and your family's gone. You don't know if they're dead or in jail. And you have no way of even finding
or
out.
you're in jail.
Exactly.
Yeah, I can't
And,
travel to Cuba, Venezuela, or even Nicaragua.
I mean, nobody knows how many hostages there are. Hundreds, thousands, tens of thousands, and they torment people. My wife's grandfather was a political prisoner for 23 years in Cuba, and it's bad. It's as hardcore communism and inhumane as you can get.
Yeah, and again, I argue with a lot of these idiots that are against foreign foreign policy aid, like Israel and whatnot. They'd say, we shouldn't do anything about Cuba. Look, if anything, as a humanitarian standpoint, yes, you do. It's like, how many people have been repressed over the years? How many people have been killed, like you mentioned, political prisoners, and people have been killed as well, in prison for decades. At the very least, you have to. There's an obligation for all Americans and all human beings around the country or the world to do something about it. I mean,
Yeah.
Cuba. Here's the issue with Cuba is that most people will agree with what I'm saying, but if you go to another country, they support Cuba. I was just
Yeah.
in Colombia a month ago, South America, and they have flights all day long going
Yeah.
to Cuba and all around the world. They fund the Cuban regime. Okay, we're cutting off oil from Venezuela. We're looking to do it from Mexico. That's a key. But other countries are flying in. Money's flowing into, and remittances are flying into or going into Cuba
Yeah.
because they're being funded. So, I mean, it is. I think Cuba's primed to go. They're ripe to be overturned, the regime. But it's got to happen. I think
Yeah.
it's to stabilize the region because everything that's happened in the region is been because of Cuba. I think what's
Yeah.
happening in Haiti, what's happening in Venezuela, even Nicaragua, they're all buddies. They've been cohorts together for years. Castro was that seed that started it all.
Yeah, it's a communist alliance. I mean,
Right.
Trump talked about in his first administration, Cuba, Venezuela, Nicaragua. I mean, South Florida is unique because most people here share or know somebody that shares that common history in Cuba and Venezuela and,
Yeah.
and the tyranny. Most Americans really don't understand what Cuba is. They think of old Havana and nice old buildings. They don't really understand how bad it is. I could tell you, like, I've heard plenty of stories and my family's experienced it. You can't have a garden in your backyard. They don't want any self-subsistence. If you grow a garden, you go to jail.
Jeez.
They do random house checks. If they find you have beef in your refrigerator, you go to jail. Well, here's an example. My father-in-law, when he was younger, he got caught selling soap. You're not supposed to make money that the government doesn't give you. So they threw him in
Jeez.
jail for every bar of soap that he got caught selling. So he went to
Really?
jail for 6 months for selling 6 bars of soap.
So each bar was $1. I mean, a month.
Yeah.
Wow.
So they
Huh.
want you 100% dependent on the government, and you have no chance of survival without the government. So it's so bad there. Uh, Sometime last year, about April and May of last year, they actually shut down the schools in Cuba for 2 full months because they didn't have enough food in the schools to feed the kids. So you talk about a failed state and oppression. This is the worst case scenario we have in Cuba, and it's the biggest humanitarian crisis, I believe, in the whole world.
Yeah, I agree. I 100% you're right, and I think it's it's the duty of the U.S. That's what we stand for. It's who we are. To go in and look, if it means taking out the regime at gunpoint, so be it. But look how many people will be grateful for. I just spoke to Congressman Carlos Jimenez last week about this, and he got very emotional. He said, "Look, I said I wouldn't go back, but if hoping this regime topples, because I will eventually go back because he's American. But I owe it to my parents.
Yeah,
He's the only Cuban-born member of Congress. He was born in Cuba, and he came here. His parents got him here, but he says he feels that he owes it to his family, not so much himself, his parents, to go back to Cuba to say, "Hey, I came back." So there's a lot of emotion down here, and you had mentioned the other countries that they can relate.
yeah,
Venezuela, Colombia, to some degree,
yeah,
Nicaragua. They've all been touched by the socialism bug. And even if they're not socialist governments, there's Brazil. I mean, they're not socialist, but all these countries, there's semblances of socialism.
yeah. You know,
So people understand it.
you you talk about affordability, and that's what you come to a crossroads, affordability, and you get a choice. What's more attractive, socialism or freedom? But when you get a tyrant in power, they deliver socialism as the answer to solve all your problems,
Right.
and have the government take care of you. The government do this for you. The government do that for you. And the freedom message to me is so much stronger because it's independence, it's self-determination, it's opportunity. And I think a lot of us Americans need to also, remember that is our, that's our history, because Mamdani won election in New York because he offers socialism as the answer to
Hmm.
affordability. And the people in South Florida know that we need to stay away from socialism because it never ends well. It ends in tyranny.
Right, and you see that, and that's why it won't work here. I see most people that come, especially the islanders that come from to the U.S.
Hmm.
legally or illegally, they come to work. They know what it's like to live in repression. I mean, I've met many Haitians over the years that they leave some island that, look at it now, it's run down, and it's run by gangs. So they come here to work, dishwasher, whatever. They'll do whatever it is to work because they realize I rather come live in squalble conditions and work as opposed to have a job to support my family, as opposed to live in worse conditions in Haiti and not have anything, and I can't feed my kids.
Yeah.
So, and that's how it is throughout all of Central America. Look, I laugh that people say, "Hey, you know what? My parents are Colombian. I can speak to this." Like I was just there 5 times last year, just a month ago I was there, and I can say this is that everyone there that I've met in Colombia, my parents, family, cousins, distant cousins, they all want to be here because of the repression there. A few years ago, my one of my cousins is an orthopedic surgeon. She was making $2,500 a month as an orthopedic surgeon, just like
Yeah.
maybe 8 years ago. And she says it just because she worked at a certain clinic. So what orthopedic surgeon only makes $2,500 a month here? So my point is that you can live good in Colombia, let's just say, or other countries, and live wealthy, but wealth to them there is different than it is here.
Yeah.
They couldn't survive, and that's why they would rather come here to struggle. A lot of them tell, "Hey, I want to come here. I'd rather struggle, work 2 jobs, work as a cab, because at least I have an opportunity to do something with myself, or maybe use my degree." Whereas in Colombia, some other, I call them banana republic states,
Hmm.
countries, they don't have that opportunity. They'll never have that opportunity.
Yeah. No, you're right. And that's the American dream. It's not, I mean, owning a home, that's the result of the American dream. People talk about that, but really the American dream to me is freedom of mind and freedom of body and freedom of private property, so you can be the best version of yourself. Whether you're working very little or working a lot, you're doing the best possible, you're pursuing excellence, the best version of yourself. Maybe he doesn't want to be an orthopedic surgeon when he came to America. Maybe he has another dream. And here you can always reinvent yourself and be the best person you want to be. And usually wealth and home and everything like that follows that when you're able to be the best version of yourself.
Yeah, you have more options here. That's the thing. In
Yeah.
these countries, you don't have any options but what there's given to you. It's what's given to
Yeah.
you.
Well, in Cuba, whether you're a dishwasher or a doctor, you make $20 a month.
Yeah, look, if I would didn't know what I do now, and it without a degree or with a degree, I can opt to do whatever I want. I can opt to say, you know what, I'm going to go sell hot dogs. I'm going to sell a hot dog. I'm going to buy a hot dog cart. I'm going to sell hot dogs. I'm going to go mow lawns. I'm going to do whatever I want. You have those options, opportunity to have those options. In these countries, you don't. You
Yeah.
don't. That's why they come here.
Yeah. So yeah, I just want to take a moment to change topics, talk about something I think is, probably the big topic across the U.S., but extremely relevant here in South Florida. Is what's the sentiment that people have here on ICE and immigration policies going on?
Well, here I think most people support ICE. Now you're going to have fringe people on both sides of the aisle that do not support ICE because of what we've seen in the news lately with the arrests, the manhandling of people. Look, but again, I say this: those issues wouldn't have happened if those activists would not have been aggressive and disrespectful to the police. You know, if you're trying to impede on a cop to make an arrest, or you block them off, or you hit them with your vehicle, guess what? You're gonna pay the price there.
Yeah.
So for the most part, I think it depends on who you ask. I think most Republicans and independents agree with that, and Democrats. I've spoken to a couple Democrats over the past couple months that agree with it. They just don't want to see it.
Yeah.
But again, they think ICE has maybe overstepped. Even one member of Congress, I won't mention his name, he's a Republican. He said, I just don't like their tactic.
Sure.
But they wouldn't have to impose those tactics if they weren't pushing back against a fringe element that's doing this for political expediency, I say. I think this is all political. So,
Yeah, I mean, what's going up there? You see a lot with just a lot of fraud, a lot of things we
well,
don't know what's
Minnesota,
going
right.
on. It's a hotbed of a lot of things. I think a lot of people don't really know the whole story, but it's very political for sure. This is something that I think I'm at ends with my opponent, Debbie Washman Schultz, because she was for open borders and defund the police. And I'm for supporting law enforcement and ICE, and I think it's really important to protect our borders. And we did have a lot of illegal criminals and cartels come here, but I do agree that I think we need to take a look at those policies and bring some humanity to what's going on with ICE. We need to focus on criminals, but it's important that we have some dignity and humanity, because a lot of people are here. Some people are fleeing tyranny, and they're not necessarily bad people, but they came here. Why wouldn't you if you had the opportunity?
right.
But they're not necessarily hurting people. I'm not saying they should be here legally, but I think the optics is off, and we need policy that actually brings dignity and humanity to things, and not just a blanket, tackle somebody if they're not a criminal.
Well, I think there's room for a bipartisan legislation. Look, Democrats and Republicans both have to take responsibility for their actions.
Yeah.
Look, under the Biden administration, the floodgates were opened, and Democrats, including your opponent, Debbie Wasserman Schultz, they all supported letting these people come in, open borders, like you said. So elections have consequences. So Republicans now, they shut down the border. See, this was an easy fix. We all knew this. It was an executive order that shut down immigration. It was an executive order that lifted it. And then it was an executive order that ended illegal immigration again.
Yeah.
So now here we are. We have all these criminal illegal aliens that are here. No, to your point, there are a lot of good people here illegally because they're leaving repression, like we mentioned, Cuba, Nicaragua, Honduras, you name it. I get that. I think there's a place for them, but they have to come out of the woodwork and say, hey, I'm illegal, and just deal with the system, But Democrats have to own up. Not a lot of them won't, but behind closed doors, many do and say, look, we have this issue. Illegal immigration, there's a lot of criminals, so they know it. They don't want to admit it because who wants to admit they were wrong?
Yeah.
They won't. They don't want to admit it because at the end of the day, again, this is about elections. So if, say, someone like Debbie Wasserman Schultz decides to say, you know what, we were wrong, and Bob, and
I haven't heard a politician ever say that.
well, that's what I'm saying. But if they were to come out and admit anything outside of what the fringe element of their party wants,
Yeah.
they get primaried. You see my point?
Yeah.
Is that they'll get primaried, and the George Soros of the very left wing fringe of the Democrat Party will primary them. Same goes for the Republicans. If you go against anything President Trump says, you will get primary someone to the far right And we're seeing that here in Florida in the gubernatorial race.
Hmm.
You're seeing
Yeah.
that now. So so I get politicians that, obviously they want to win re-election. They're up every 2 years, members of Congress, and they're even though they'll say something, they don't really mean it most of the times. But what does that say about them? You just have to but again, they're thinking, hey, I need to get reelected. But the Democrats have to own up to the immigration problem we have now. You can't blame it on Trump.
No.
This happened during the Biden administration,
Well, it
and now
didn't
they
just
all voted
happen during
for
the
it,
Biden
or supported
administration.
it.
It was systematically promoted. It wasn't even
Right.
that they were like, we're not paying attention. They actually promoted the idea of coming in.
Biden did, right?
Correct, the Biden administration.
Right.
And I've personally talked to people that said, yeah, we crossed the border, just call the cops, bring us the Catholic Charities, which isn't very Catholic to me.
Right.
They feed them, clothe them, and bus ticket. So it was systematic. People that got here within a week, they got a voter registration card and welfare. And so it was incentivized to bring them here. So it wasn't that people weren't paying attention or was in negligence. Kamala Harris, as the borders are, and the Biden administration actually coordinated this to make it happen.
Oh no, 100%. This was known. I mean, me dealing with a lot of members, I know for a fact this was coordinated, and we saw it. Look, it doesn't take a rocket science to see this, to know this. It was common sense because they stopped one day when President Trump put down the executive edict to stop immigration. It stopped. It stopped. He ended
Yeah.
it. It was that easy. So again, people have to take responsibility for their actions. I think that Republicans need to push that in this coming midterm election. They need to push that. They need to speak to the criminality. Look, there's a reason why there's ICE. ICE is going after criminal illegal aliens. Media likes to show that, hey, they're arresting the poor woman who's been here for 4 years, has kids. We don't know why they're arresting her particularly. There's a reason why. Maybe she's committing a crime, some kind of fraud. We don't know. It doesn't get reported for the most part.
Yeah.
It just looks like the optics are that they're arresting some poor lady. She has 3 kids, and she's an illegal. She came here illegal. But okay, why are they actually looking for her? And like the other day, they're looking for a pedophile, and there are protests there impeding on law enforcement from doing their job. And he was a pedophile. And the guy even said on TV, he's like on camera, like, we're here to arrest this pedophile. And they didn't care that they were there for a criminal. They just care that ICE was there. Like
Yeah.
ICE is the big boogeyman now. But let me just tell you, they're singing a different tune if a criminal illegal alien kills a family member, breaks into your house. You see, a drunk driver that hurts you and your family. They sing a different tune then.
Yeah. Yeah, it's well, the problem I have with that is I don't think that's not organic protesting. I mean, that is also coordinated. So I don't even know where to take that. I mean, that's just something that really needs to be investigated because I have plenty of Democrat friends here in South Florida, and they don't agree with that. What's going on there?
Right.
I mean, it's a loss of common sense. I think with the party, and the average person still has common sense, and they still believe in what their principal beliefs, but the party lost its way, in my opinion.
I think for the most part, Republicans and Democrats and Independents, they don't support illegal immigration. But again, everything is political in this world.
Yeah.
And so if you will go against illegal immigration, as a Democrat, you can't say you're against illegal immigration because depending on how your district swings. If you're in a swing district, you say that Democrats will put a very hardcore leftist against you, and the same goes for Republicans.
Yeah.
So unfortunately, that's how the makeup of the country, the electorate is. That's how it works. Everything's political. This. You're running for office.
Yeah, it's got a competition.
And right. And so and it's about winning because everyone has an idea. If I win, I'm going to do this, this, and this, and this. And hate to anyone's bubble, but pop your bubble either. It's very difficult when you go up to D.C. to make a lot of change because if you're not the party in power, it's very difficult to do anything. And if you are the party in power, you're competing against every one of your colleagues to get your voice heard and to get your bills put through. And so there's always going to be infighting and backroom turmoil.
Yeah.
I see it every day.
There's 435 members of Congress, which is the House of Reps, which is one
House of
half of
Reps.
Congress, which is 1/3 of the government. So when you break it down, the numbers, it's not a one-man show.
Believe it or not, more people, it's funny because more people, I think there's more room for bipartisanship because it'd be funny if you walk the halls of Congress. Listen, I'll be there on Monday, and I'm there usually every week. It's funny to see the most progressive Democrat lawmakers and the most conservative-minded lawmakers chumming it up, like friendly, like walking the aisles, hey, hugging it out, a kiss here. I mean, I'm in the elevator with a bunch of them once in a while, and they're just like a kumbaya moment over here. I'm like, listen, guys, get a room. It's kind of like and joking, but they're friendly. They get
Yeah.
along great. They just know that they have to side for the most part with their party because they just have to. And I've had these conversations on both sides of the aisle. They say, look, I believe in this, but I have to vote against it because if I don't, my party's going to come after me, and I'm going to get primaried. Happens on both sides, so that's unfortunate. But let me just tell you, if that wasn't the case, I think you'd see a lot more bipartisanship in the U.S. Congress. Maybe not so much the Senate, but definitely the House.
Yeah, I think that's just a natural problem with bureaucracies.
Right.
The bureaucracy overrules common sense.
Yeah.
And
Something you're looking forward to go up there. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I'll do my best. We'll make something work. And I think part of defeating bureaucracy is having a loud voice, getting support, and the way you do that is media. I
Right.
mean, if your opinion's the most popular opinion, you can force your issue.
Well, also, but you have to be fair to yourself and also fair to the people listening. Because remember, when you have a voice, you're responsible. You have to have a lot of responsibility because people are counting on you to give them information that's reasonable and it's true. If you're lying to your constituents or lying to your audience, what does that say about you? You're disseminating misinformation. You've heard that term before. You're disseminating it, and it's not fair because would you like to be lied to?
No, of course
Would you
not.
like to think that this is? I mean, a lot of people go out and get in trouble because they believe a certain narrative. That it must be true because if the people they're listening to are saying it, how would they lie to me on the air or on TV? And that's disingenuous, I think. So I always think like you have to be true. Like, oh, I have a big voice, and my job is to portray the news however the news is, not give my opinion. Even though I do have a big opinion, we try to do this and push the news so it's fair to both Republican, Democrat, and Independent. We don't. That's not our job. Is to put opinion in our news stories. That's why we are where we are. Even though sometimes you wish like, oh, this damn Republican, I wish you'd shut up, or this Democrat, I'm like, well, you sound like an idiot, whatever. But the point is, that's my job and my responsibility to do so. And as members of Congress, the same thing. If you were to get up there, I would tell you the same thing. I think you need to be responsible for everyone in your district, all your constituents, and because look, whether they're Republican or Democrat, they're looking to you as a representation. You got to be able to represent them.
Well, I think anytime there's an unfair deal where one side has, more to gain from it, the deal doesn't last long. You're going to be voted out if you're lying. It'll be caught. If you're enriching yourself, if you're insider trading, if you're doing all these things and you're not actually helping your community, they're going to vote you out.
Right.
And it's just a matter of time.
Right. And it's also, again, the reason is like, what are you doing up there? Because if you're just wanting to be reelected, because that's all that matters, that's very selfish.
Yeah.
Because if you're true to yourself and tell the truth and you're a one-term candidate or a two-term elected official, and you get ousted because you're being true and fair to your constituents, then you know what?
I'd prefer that.
I would
honestly.
prefer that too. I say, look, I
Because
got
it shouldn't
voted
be
out.
a lifelong career. It should be, if your opinion, if your voice, if your competency is not what the people want, then let them vote you out because people change. And maybe you were effective, maybe you had the right idea at the time, but that's the whole point. That's why Congress gets elected every 2 years.
Right.
It's because things change. And when Senate is there every 6 years because they create stability, but Congress is there to be changing with the changing times.
Right. Yeah, and that's why it was designed that way. Every 2 years, the representation. Senators every 6 years, so they have a little more leeway there. But members of Congress, and I get it because it's part of the problem because they know they have the reelection every 2 years. That's why they're willing. They can't go against their party talking points because they know that just like that, they're going to get primaried. And a lot of times it's the party who puts someone else up there. Republicans are having that problem now with people that don't agree with the president whole through and through. He'll tell you he's going to primary you, and it's like and you don't want to be on the receiving end of that because all it takes is a tweet to really muck up your day.
Yeah.
But again, that's part of politics.
Well, I think there's more to it than that. I think there's complexities. It's never as simple as I didn't agree with it, but I voted for it, or I do agree for it, but I'm not voting for it. I think everything it evolves, and sometimes you need to get a deal done, but things adapt. And you start here, okay, that's a starting point, but I know this will give me the opportunity to build higher 3 months from now because the stage is already set.
Right.
And sometimes you can't always convey that to everyone, but there's a strategy to get to the end goal, which is what the people want or people need. And sometimes it's not always one-to-one linear, like I could do this and boom, it's
Right.
solved. Sometimes you have to let things evolve and you adapt to it and you build on it. And those things are more complicated. It's more, but maybe unpopular, but that's how you get things done. That's how you do it in the private sector.
Well, that's the thing is people who have private sector experience tend to think more rationally, my opinion.
I would say that's true. Yeah.
You know,
Because private sector people are goal oriented. It's about results, measurable results.
right? But again, to their defense is like I've also met people that are lifelong politicians that are so good at what they do that they can understand your opinion, your points, what
Yeah.
someone in the private sector brings in. But then there's some that just don't know. They're oblivious to what other people are thinking outside of the process that they've lived.
Yeah.
Like some people have had their job. The only job they've had is running for elected office. Some
Yeah.
people are just been doing that. And that's all they know.
There's just some people more competent than others, and that's just why it's important to get the right people in office because, yeah, some people hit their ceiling and they'll never be better. And as an entrepreneur, I've always tried to do as much as possible. And a lot of people say focus on one thing, be great at it. But for me, I've always tried to, whether I fail or not, try as many things because everything to me is connected and it empowers me to learn more, to learn how to manage people, how to manage information, and whatever it takes to get to that end goal. And I think that's what helps coming to Congress or in government because you have problem-solving skills in a myriad of different industries or sectors, not necessarily just, well, how do I get this bill passed? Because at the end of the day, you're dealing with people. It's all about managing information to people. And
Right.
whether you get them to vote like you or you have to convince your ideas, sell them on your ideas, talk to your constituents, get them to understand what you're trying to do. It's all about communication.
And a little bit of craziness because to run for office, you got to be nuts.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, I did a long time ago. I don't know what I was thinking, but but again, to me as a journalist, I give you guys credit because it takes a lot to run. You'll see what I'm talking about when you get into the throes of the campaign, like down the road, primary or general. It's all the same when you have to knock on doors, when you have to really deal with constituents, go to events, and your family is put on the back burner. And let me just tell you, once that election is over, that election night, win, lose, or draw, you'll be relieved. You'll be like, thank God, because it just takes a toll. But in hindsight, it's very rewarding in the sense that you try to do something or you did something, you accomplished it, and now it's the next step.
Yeah.
It's pretty rewarding. I can't regret. I badmouth it all the time, but when I ran back in 18, I look back, like, yeah, I learned a lot. It was something I wish I'm glad I did.
Yeah, for me, I'm still learning every day. I mean, I think it's very different from the private sector, but it's like I was telling you earlier in the show, I've never had social media before. I've been very private. So me being very open and I'm going against all my private sector instincts. And so I'm learning a lot. And I was telling my wife, the other day, I was like, imagine waking up saying, today I'm going to be a lawyer. I mean, that's what it's like because you're changing everything. You're going to be this new industry. You're going to learn everything new from scratch. I mean, obviously not going to, grad school or anything, but you're learning something brand new. And
Have you had a door slammed in your face yet?
I haven't.
Okay.
Not
Okay.
yet.
After
I'm
the
sure it'll
10th
happen.
one, give me a call. Let me know how you feel. It happens.
Yeah.
You're going to get cursed out. People in the same party, they're going to curse you out. You're going to, you're going to hear all kinds of crazy stuff. Slam the door in your face. They won't open the door. It's part of the learning process. It's humbling because you think you're going to, I'm the Republican in the race and I'm going against Debbie Wasserman Schultz. They're all going to support me. Not necessarily. People are very finicky. That's what makes our country great. Everyone's different.
Well, I think everybody naturally just distrusts anybody in government. That's just our nature, right? We all think we're being sold something and we can't trust that person.
I once had a woman slam the door in my face. I mean, cursed me out. I started walking. She saw me. She chased me down 4 houses over to apologize
Okay.
and listen to me. And I don't know if she voted for me or not. I don't know, but she was Republican and way back when. But I don't know if she voted for me. But the point is that you're going to get that.
Yeah.
So word of advice is that just take it for what it is. Take it with a grain of salt. You know, unless they shake a dog at you on you, then that's a different story. But that didn't happen to me. But I'm just telling you, it's very again, it's humbling, and sometimes being humble is good because sometimes you're running and everyone thinks you're the best thing since sliced bread. You're great, Michael Carbonaro. You're great. You know, nice little Italian boy. You know, you're doing this. And then you start believing all that, the hype.
Yeah, yeah. Sure.
And
Yeah,
then
you
then
believe your
you
own BS.
right, you start believing the BS, and you go to someone's door.
Yeah.
How you doing? Oh, you're a nice little lady. You know what, Michael? I know who you are. F you. And they slam the door in your face, and guess what? That ego just drops. That's reality.
Yeah.
So it'll happen.
Well, I'll let you know. I'll text you when it does. All right. I want to bring up a couple other things.
Yep.
You know, just because I know this is what people, I'm hearing from everyone. Probably the biggest concern, besides affordability here, is healthcare.
Yep.
And I'm just curious. You know, what are you seeing from your journalism side? From what I see is we have a broken system, and everybody's upset. People want to get coverage. People don't want illegals getting coverage, and that's why we had the government shutdown. And but I can tell you from just a recent personal experience. You know, I was had a situation. A family member was at a hospital recently, and you know, one thing after another thing, and they did this, and that, and I realized they started doing services that really weren't related to the reason why we were there.
Right.
And I'm like, well, they're just racking up the bills. And I asked one person, he's like, oh yeah, that's just protocol. And I was like, okay, no, doctor, I'm not going to be the guy and just start yelling at everybody. I was just, you know, within reason, I was just, okay, just make sure everybody's okay and we can be on our way. And but it was a long day, and at the end, I was like, well, how much is this going to be? He's like, the guy kind of chuckled and said, a lot. So, and he
Have you
said,
seen one of these hospital bills?
I'm expecting it any day now. I don't know if it's going to be $2,000 or $20,000. I have no idea.
I've seen I had back surgery 2 years ago, and they show me what my back surgeon, who I'm seeing tomorrow at his house, his bill was going to be $300,000 because I was having a certain procedure done.
Yeah.
But it's $400,000. I'm like, I fell over. They said, but this is what we agree to pay. The insurance only pay $87,000. It's still a lot of money
Yeah.
for a 2-hour surgery, you know. So we're in the wrong profession, I think. But my point is that the way they bill is the problem.
Absolutely.
The way they overcharge, and the reason why they overcharge has a lot of variables involved, including, you know, these frivolous lawsuits over the years. I mean, it just so many
I've heard
things
the
involved.
insurance is like 50% of their
Right.
overhead.
It's terrible. I mean, there's a lot. You can't really blame one, but that's a big one.
Well, what I was shocked at, I mean, I'm not completely shocked because I've seen this before. They said at the end, well, if you're paying cash, we'll knock off 70%.
That's true.
So I'm thinking, okay, well, 70% less covers the bill. That means you're overcharging the insurances by 300%.
I can speak truth because see this hand? It accidentally fell on someone's face back in 2006.
Yeah.
It just did, you know, and I broke it. I broke this metatarsal in half.
Yeah.
So I flew from California here. I had it X-rayed. And it was broken like this, and I had to go to the hospital. So I told them, I said, I don't have health insurance. I'm like, well, if you have to have, it's going to cost you this. If you pay cash, it's going to cost you $1,000. I paid $1,000
Yeah.
instead of paying like $6,000-7,000. That is a racket.
It is. No,
I mean, I
it's
speak from
just-
experience because this happened to me 10, 15 years ago. It's a racket, no more, longer. It's a racket that and again, you want to blame the hospitals for overcharging, but the reason why they're overcharging is to compensate for where they're losing money. And a lot of it is, you know, you have walk-ins that can't afford procedures. A homeless person has no insurance. They're going to rack up a bill. You know, and
No, we used to have charity care, but Obamacare got rid of the charity care, and charity care would allow in all the states, the hospitals could write off about 1/3 of their services for situations like that.
right.
So Obamacare basically made charity care not work anymore. So I'm not an expert in this field, but I know what we have doesn't
Right.
work, and that's a big part of contributing to the affordability issue because my insurance is so expensive.
Right.
I rarely use it because I'm only there for emergencies. But after my last experience recently, it makes more sense for me to take that premium money and just put it in savings because I'll have more than enough to cover it.
Well, I'll give you advice. You're a lot younger than me. I'm old as dirt. And let me just tell you, over the years, you're going to need insurance, and it's not just for medical, for emergency reasons. Because I've gone under the knife probably 7, 8 times over the past 10 years, orthopedic stuff
Yeah.
that I had to, and then you're paying the copay, and you're
Yeah.
paying all the stuff, the deductible. You have to because if you can't move your arm because you're tore a rotator or whatever, you're not going to live like that. You can't. The quality of life, you're going to pay it.
Yeah.
So mind you, if it's an emergency, it pays for that. You still have to pay something, and they'll deal with it. But if it's an elective surgery that you have to have, I mean, good luck.
Yeah.
But I see your point, and as far as your point of healthcare, that's the big issue now. One big issue in Florida specifically is there's a big shortage of nurses and healthcare professionals. That's a big issue. It's still happening here, and people don't know it. I think there's a deficit of like 30,000 nurses. So you have a lot of these schools like Kaiser beefing up their nursing programs.
Yeah.
So I think it's all tied together. I think a lot of you see a lot of these hospitals expanding here in South Florida,
Yep.
moving up from Miami, if you would. And they're look, I just see these bills and they're outrageous what they're charging for an X-ray, like a couple $1,000, where really if you can pay cash, a couple $100. It's just nuts.
Yeah.
An X-ray takes like 2 seconds to do it. Doesn't make any sense, And like what you're saying is that there's a way to cut back. If they were to cut back on that, more people can afford it. But then their profits drop, and if their profits drop, they have to cut fat like any business around the edges, and people start losing their jobs. So it's like a vicious cycle.
Yeah. No, I agree. What we have now is broken. We need to fix it, and that's something obviously needs to be a big focus in Congress the next couple of years. I mean, I'm going to say years. It needs to be sooner than later, because a lot of people just can't afford it anymore. So yeah, I was down here in Broward County specifically. There's a big Jewish contingency, and obviously we all seen a rise in anti-Semitism. What do you make of that going on right now here and on the world stage?
Well, look, I think it's important to note that for historically, for whatever reason, the Jewish community has been blamed for all the ills of the world. You saw that in World War II. Even after that, after the Jewish state was established in late 1940s, people didn't like that. I think blamed the Jews for everything. But recently, you see this rise in anti-Semitism. I don't know where it's come from, but you have to look to the Middle East. The hatred towards Israel by countries like Iran. I mean, they want to destroy. They're the little Satan. We're the big Satan. And again, terrorism is funded by a lot of countries, including us. And we have to take responsibility for a lot of the anti-Semitism that's risen and violence against Israel, because we gave them millions of dollars back, money that we confiscated way back when during the Obama administration. And we haven't done much to Iran over the past years, except for until what Trump did something earlier last year, going after them.
Yeah.
So, and I think now they're bending that knee to the West or to us, but still they want to annihilate us in Israel, and that's where I think where it all stems from. So I think we need to take responsibility for helping fund terrorism to some degree.
Well, a big part of that, we're dealing with that. We had the attacks of October 7th that led into the war in Gaza. Then we had a situation with Iran a few months ago. Now this buildup with Iran again. I mean, Iran, Hezbollah is behind a lot of the global terrorist operations, including in Venezuela, we talked about earlier.
Yep.
But this, again, you're right, it goes back to the Obama administration and the signing of the Iran nuclear deal, which was something that Debbie Wasserman Schultz, my opponent, signed that. And she essentially signed off on a policy that we're still paying for today, that it put the anti-Semitism at its probably highest peak since half a century ago. And we're at war with Iran now, or potentially at war with Iran right now because of what's going on, because of the Iran nuclear deal.
Yeah, I think I don't know if I want to call it a mistake on the part of Democrats supporting that, but remember, President Obama was in office, and that's what he wanted. And so I think the blame is strictly on him. But again, to some degree, Democrats are responsible because they went along with it.
Yeah.
They went along with it, and maybe at the time they thought it was practical. The president sold them that we needed this to be able to broker a deal because they're getting a nuclear weapon. Turns out maybe they got egg in their face. So, but again, they have to take responsibility for their vote or for their support of that initiative. In hindsight, it turns out it was a bad move.
Yeah.
So we'll see what happens. But again, it was I think it was a dark period because, and again, it's you have to understand how things get sold and pitched. You know, it was safe back then for Democrats to get back to back it because they controlled all three. I believe they controlled the Senate, the House, and the executive branch. So, but again, what do they say? Elections have consequences, and
Yeah.
you know, there's always they're always going to have to pay for what they've said and done every election cycle and own up to it.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. I think that Iran nuclear deal essentially funded the largest terrorist promoter in the world, Iran, and we are dealing with it today. It has consequences, but 3 terms later, it's we now have our Navy right around Iran right now, and I think we're all a little worried what's going to happen. But it's something that, actions have consequences. So hopefully this gets resolved peacefully and everybody's safe. The U.S. is safe, Israel's safe, and that's the best we can hope for.
Right.
So, Javier, I know it's been a long conversation. We've covered a lot of topics, and I appreciate you coming in today.
No, thanks for having me back. Anytime. I'm right down the road, so if you need to talk about anything, feel free to give me a call.
All right. Thank you so much. Thanks for coming on.
Appreciate it.
Thanks for watching. We hope you enjoyed today's show. It's available on replay, so click the like and subscribe button and forward it around to your friends. Let them get involved too. Remember, to really make your voice heard, you need to vote. Click the link below or scan the QR code to request a vote by mail ballot. Your vote can really make a difference. Thanks again, everyone.